This is Football at 4.
Josh Henning filling in for Mike Gill on a Tuesday edition of the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. And yes, it's time for Football at 4 with the one and only NFL insider Adam Kaplan from the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com, at Kaplan NFL on the Twitter X platform. Just search Inside the Birds on YouTube. And don't forget, Inside the Birds exclusive content on Patreon. And he joins us live from the road is Adam Kaplan here on 97.3 ESPN. Adam, welcome in. How you doing this Tuesday?
Josh, I'm good. Yeah, look, I'll be on the road. I'll be visiting tomorrow and Thursday. The Titans are hosting the Seahawks for joint practices. I was with the Steelers Sunday and Monday, and lots going on around the National Football League. We'll see if the Brandon Ayuk trade goes through or not, whether he's staying or going to Pittsburgh. And the Eagles holding just one, the only joint practice this summer, and they're doing it in Foxborough, Massachusetts, which they did earlier today in a practice for over 2 hours.
Yeah, the Eagles were back on the field today, and one of the interesting notes of the day, Adam, Cooper DeJean is back. Now, we will note he didn't go through full practice, but he was limited. He was going through individual drills, so it is good to have the rookie back on the field, Adam.
Yeah, and individual drills is different from the 7-on-7 or team. It's individualized movement, and it's just not your normal part of practice. But the great thing is he was taking part in a part of practice. Individual drills are still part of practice. So this is the first step in a long one. So let's not forget, Josh, he's not been on the field with the Eagles for about 2 months. The Eagles ended practice in their offseason program around 13th or 14th of June. So it's basically been 2 months. It's just practice with the team. You're not going to go full bore the first day back with any players come back from an injury like this. So this is good. Look, he got on the field. We don't know where he's going to line up. He did some drills, for nickel and corner and so forth. But we're not going to know. In fact, Josh, their next practice won't be till Saturday, Josh. So we're not going to know for sure exactly what's going to happen. But it's just getting him on the field is huge.
He has said, with DeJean, he had said to the media today, which he has said previously, that he has worked at both corner and nickel. He has not worked at safety. So what do you think his future is going to be for an Eagles team that does still have some questions in that secondary?
Yeah, that's a great question, Josh. So basically, here's the way we look at it. Once he's allowed to practice fully, so then the clock starts on what his role would be. Now, here's the question. Let's just say that, they want to play him an outside corner. Well, that's where Quinyon Mitchell is projected to play this season, eventually. Like right now, he's been their nickel defensive back. And Vic Fangio, the defense coordinator, said, no, he's not a corner. That's a different position. But we know that they drafted him to be an outside corner, not a slot, or as Vic calls a nickel defensive player. It's not, he doesn't see it quite like every other team does, but nevertheless. So they'll have a decision to make because DeJean was drafted to play outside eventually. Although the Eagles knew he could play nickel, he could play safety. We know Moshe and I talked to several teams that thought long-term he would have to be a safety, but the Eagles don't see it that way. Not every team's going to agree. So it's fascinating to see what's going to happen here. But for the short term, once he starts fully practicing, which should be next week, barring a setback, because they do their first practice after the game is on Saturday and they practice Sunday. The hope is here by next week, he'll take in full practices. So then we'll know exactly where to line up. So let's extrapolate. If he's lining up an outside corner, maybe the Eagles keep Mitchell as a nickel defender for the time being. Well, how does that impact Avonte Maddox? How does that impact Tyler Hall? Because if Mitchell's going to start the season as a nickel defensive back, you'd only need one backup. You don't need two of them. That impacts Tyler Hall. Now, if DeJean is at nickel, then you could bet week one Mitchell's going to be starting outside corner, and then Isaiah Rodgers would be the backup. There are a lot of differences here, and then Ringo would be their fourth corner, which is really what we all projected. Eventually, he'd be their fourth corner. Rodgers would be the third. Mitchell would be starting corner. That gives him tremendous depth, and this is a good problem to have, Josh. You know, with him coming back, once DeGene is allowed to do everything. And by the way, we should mention C.J. Gardner-Johnson's not practicing it. He's not been cleared for contact with that shoulder injury now. But this is a good problem to have. One is, I was saying this on our Discord channel because Jeff and I pop in there every day now. When is the last time you thought of the Eagles having a good mixture of young players and younger and older players and feeling good about the future of the secondary? That to me is a really good problem to have. And it's not a problem, but you know what I mean. Can't play everybody.
Right.
I think it's a great thing.
Well, I mean, it's been, 20 years since they drafted, Lito Shepherd and Sheldon Brown, right, Adam?
Yeah, it is really remarkable to me, Josh, the way this thing has happened. Because, look, they've not been able to draft that well corner, we know, for years. Ringo's had a good offseason. He didn't have a good training camp last year. Isaiah Rodgers has done a really good job of coming back. He was healthy. The Eagles didn't know much about him because they couldn't talk to him directly. They could only talk to the agent. They knew he'd been working out, and they thought he was in good physical shape. But once they got him to OTAs, they knew he was back. And remember now, he's on a 1-year deal for the minimum of service that he's played. So it's an old make good contract. If he wants to get paid, he's got to make the roster, which he's obviously going to do. He's got a lot of urgency. So this is a good thing overall.
Talk with Adam Kaplan, NFL insider from the Inside the Birds podcast at Kaplan NFL on the TourX platform. The other injury news we got today, Adam, another player, yes, he was limited, but he was back on the field, a guy the Eagles were hoping could take a hold of this number 3 wide receiver position, Paris Campbell. Talk about him, Adam.
This is an interesting thing. I know that Paris Campbell's got this groin injury, but they have to figure out if he could contribute this season. And they got to see him. They just got to see him be healthy for the rest of camp and that 4th preseason week where there is no game. That's what we call the off week of preseason, where that's when the reporters they don't get to see all of practice. And that's when, as we understand it, the final decisions are made on the roster and rotations and so forth. So it's to me, Josh, they don't know if Paris Campbell's going to be with them yet. He's got to prove it. The guaranteed money in his contract isn't a lot. They'd love him to be the 3, but they don't know that yet. In fact, it's really Johnny Wilson and Britton Covey who continue to rotate as a 3 in different type of roles. As the 3, there are different ways you can do it, but boy, they'd like to know on Paris Campbell, and at least he started working today, and hopefully next week he's fully practicing.
Adam, is interesting because Paris Campbell does have a history of injuries, and so you would have to think, can they keep him healthy through training camp to get to the season, even make that evaluation, right? Yes, and Josh, that'll play into whether the Eagles sign a receiver to the 53, like a veteran who hits the street, when teams sign the 53, or do they sign a veteran to the practice squad? Right. They're going to need somebody. I mean, this is not a secret. They're going to have to add a receiver or 2 by the start of the season. But as we've told people, it doesn't have to be to the 53. It could be to the practice squad where you then get the guy in your program. There's no pressure to put the guy in the 53. You get him into practice and you see how he does. And if he's needed, then you call him up. You activate him off the practice squad. So that's the beauty of having what we call the 69-man roster, 53 plus 16. Adam, another player with an injury history who is not practicing again today, was not one of the limiteds. He was not practicing at all today. Grant Calcaterra, a guy who's a phenomenal athlete, but he seems to never stay healthy. This time, that shoulder injury is still lingering and keeping him from getting any action. Yeah, and we worry about this because it's not just concussion history, which was significant, which he temporarily retired in college about. He's had some injuries, here with the Eagles, and doesn't have the biggest frame in the world. So you worry about that. Let's give him more reps to E.J. Jenkins, who had a nice catch today. They got to get him back. He's the clear number 2 tight end. And, the other thing, Josh, is your number 2 tight end's got to be able to block. And, you really worry. This is the one thing that I worry about with this player is, he's, as you said, and I agree, he's a really good athlete, and he's had a great camp. But we still don't know if he blocks well enough. And they do have C.J. Uzomah as a better blocker, but he has not had a great camp.
And he's got he right now, Uzama is really fighting for a roster spot.
And this is an important conversation, Adam, because we know historically, you look at Kellen Moore's years with the Cowboys and even last year with the Chargers, he likes to use the tight ends. He is a guy who throws a lot of targets, a lot of volume at his tight ends. Adam, I've said the stat numerous times. Under Kellen Moore, the tight end averages almost 8 touchdowns per year in his offense. So the Eagles need to find out who exactly is going to be available to be the number 2 tight end.
Yeah, and look, Calcaterra's the 2. If the season started now, he's the clear 2. But you got to be able to pen on the guy. Now, this E.J. Jenkins, by the way, is a converted receiver. And he's really big. He's over 6'5". He's a fascinating player, and he's a willing blocker. He's certainly a long shot to make the roster, but we certainly could see him on the practice squad. And it will not surprise us. Let's put it this way, Josh: if they only keep 2 tight ends, they'll probably have 2 on the practice squad. So yeah, they one way or the other are going to probably have 4 tight ends.
Before I let you go, Adam, moving forward, which position do you think is going to end up being a higher priority for the Eagles when they make the final 53, not the initial 53? Is it going to be the backup tight end, or will it be the number 3 receiver?
Boy, in terms of, once the 53 set, looking at other players to add, or just has the biggest question marks? What do you mean by that?
The final 53, not the initial, because we know the initial is, a lot of roster, negotiating and moving the parts. So, like, when we get to the Eagles going down to Brazil, to Green Bay, do you think you and Adam, when you do the Inside the Birds pod, are you guys going to be like, man, look what they did with the 3 receiver, or look at what they did with the backup tight end?
Oh, I would say receiver for sure, because they don't know who their 3 is. It's a problem. I mean, we know that number 3 receiver in this offense won't catch the ball a lot, but this is the most important point. The number 3 receiver is theoretically one injury away from starting. If Smith or Brown gets hurt, that's increasingly important. So, folks, think of it that way. It's not the usage of it. Coaches will tell you, what's our answer if our starter gets hurt? Do you really feel comfortable with Johnny Wilson starting if A.J. Brown gets hurt? I would say probably not. Now, Paris Campbell, if you could depend on the guy, but, man, with 3 weeks of the season starts, Josh, I don't know that you can depend on him.
And as you guys have said numerous times, depth is not the number of guys you have, but the number of guys you can depend on. It's a very different
quality.
Yeah,
it's a quality.
Absolutely. Yeah. At Kaplan NFL on the Twitter X platform. Inside the Birds podcast. Like, subscribe, and download wherever you get your podcasts. Also, check out Inside the Birds on YouTube. And don't forget about the Inside the Birds Patreon. And Adam, you kind of slipped in there a little bit earlier. You and Jeff are jumping on the Discord a little more often.
Yeah, we're on there almost every day. Yeah, we used to do our Discord chat, but it was tough for people to make it. So said, what we'll do? We'll just jump in throughout the day. Every so often. Sometimes we'll stay on for an hour, sometimes 10 minutes, but we're there to answer questions and have conversations. And we were there during the game. It was actually, I think I was in there for like 2 hours during the game. It's kind of funny. It's great because you get to hear and see what people, what's on their minds. And by the way, we have our Wednesday live video chat on Zoom for the Patreon members, and it's great because we drop a lot of nuggets we don't drop on our show, and it's you never know what we're going to tell people, so it's always fun, and we like to see the people's faces when we drop some nuggets in there, so it's always interesting.
Adam, safe travels. We'll talk to you again on Friday.
Sounds good. Thanks.